Commander Vex had been on 17 diplomatic missions in his career, and he had hated 16 of them with professional consistency. The 17th, he suspected, would finally achieve perfection. It would be the worst one yet. His transport shuttle descended slowly through Altara's upper atmosphere, its hull surrounded by a shimmering veil of refracted light. At first, Vex thought something was wrong with the viewport glass. He leaned forward, squinting slightly, and tapped the transparent surface with one knuckle. The glass, offended by the accusation, remained perfectly functional. "No," he murmured to himself. "It's the planet." Altara did not reflect light. It dismantled it. The entire surface was composed of vast crystalline formations that stretched across continents, rising into immense spires that pierced the sky like frozen lightning. Twin suns hung overhead, their light splitting into endless spectrums across the planet's surface. Colors existed here that his eyes struggled to categorize. His translation implant briefly attempted to label one of them and failed, which was both impressive and slightly insulting. Behind him, Ambassador Halvek cleared his throat in the way diplomats did when preparing to deliver either wisdom or boredom. "Commander Vex," Halvek said smoothly, "please remember that Altaran culture values composure. Avoid unnecessary commentary." Vex nodded politely. This was a mistake, because Halvek had not specified unnecessary internal commentary. Vex leaned back into his seat and folded his arms, staring out at the approaching capital city. The structures rose organically from the surface, grown rather than constructed. He had reviewed the briefings, of course. Altaran architecture was not assembled. It was cultivated. Their buildings were essentially obedient geological formations. Vex had once struggled to keep a houseplant alive for 3 weeks. He suspected the Altaran buildings would judge him for that. The shuttle landed with a gentle, almost apologetic vibration. There was no mechanical thud, no harsh contact. It was as if the platform had reached up and caught them. "That's unsettling," Vex muttered. The rear hatch opened with a quiet hiss. Warm air entered the shuttle, carrying a faint harmonic resonance. It was not sound exactly. It was vibration, like the suggestion of music that had not yet decided to exist. Vex stepped forward with the rest of the delegation, his boots meeting the crystal surface. The moment his weight settled, the platform emitted a soft tone. He froze. It was subtle but unmistakable. He lifted one foot cautiously. The tone stopped. He put it down again. Another tone. He stared at the ground. The ground, unfortunately, refused to explain itself. "That's new," he whispered. Behind him, one of the security officers shifted his stance. The crystal beneath her feet emitted a slightly different tone. Vex frowned. Weight distribution, he thought immediately. Density response. Harmonic feedback based on pressure variance. The platform was measuring them. He suddenly became very aware of his posture. Ahead, the Altaran delegation waited. They stood in perfect stillness, their forms elegant and unnervingly composed. They appeared human at first glance, but the illusion did not survive closer inspection. Their ears extended gracefully beyond human proportions, long and refined, tapering into delicate points. Their movements were precise, efficient, as if wasted motion were a form of personal failure. At their center stood someone who required no introduction, Princess Zara. Vex knew it instantly. Authority had weight, and she carried it effortlessly. Her expression was calm, but not passive. It was the calm of someone who had never needed to doubt herself. Her pale eyes scanned the arriving humans, not with hostility, but with detached evaluation. When her gaze reached Vex, it paused briefly. Not long enough to form an opinion, just long enough to dismiss him. Vex found this comforting. It meant he could safely avoid saying something embarrassing to royalty. Ambassador Halvek stepped forward and began speaking, his voice flowing through diplomatic translation protocols. "On behalf of the United Terran Coalition," Vex stopped listening immediately. Instead, he crouched slightly and touched the crystal surface with his fingertips. It was warm, not externally warm, but internally, like it carried energy just beneath the surface. The crystal responded with a faint vibration, almost like recognition. He quickly withdrew his hand. "Sorry," he whispered. He was not entirely sure why he apologized. The platform, to its credit, did not hold a grudge. Princess Zara watched him, not obviously. She did not turn her head. She did not shift her posture. But she noticed the human engineer was not behaving correctly. He was not posturing. He was not attempting to impress anyone. He was examining the platform with quiet curiosity, like someone who had forgotten he was standing in the presence of royalty. It was unusual. Most visitors tried too hard. This one seemed unaware he was supposed to try at all. Vex stood up again, adjusting his uniform. He risked another glance at the crystal beneath his feet. He had spent his life working with energy systems, reactors, grids, containment matrices. Energy always behaved according to rules. This did not feel like rules. This felt like conversation. He shifted his weight slightly. The tone beneath him changed. He tilted his head. Interesting. Very interesting. He wondered what would happen if he jumped. He decided this would be a poor diplomatic choice. Princess Zara, meanwhile, had already grown bored of the formalities. The human ambassador continued speaking, his words predictable and carefully constructed. She had heard variations of this speech countless times. She already knew how it would end. Promises, cooperation, mutual benefit, none of it ever mattered. She began to turn. Then the tone beneath the platform changed. It was small, but it was wrong. Zara froze. The harmonic resonance of Altara had been perfect for longer than human civilization had existed. Perfection did not change, yet it had. Around her, the crystal structures dimmed by a fraction. Altaran engineers stiffened. Something impossible had just occurred. Across the platform, Vex frowned. He listened carefully. The tone was not failing. It was responding. That's feedback," he murmured quietly. Princess Zara turned her head. For the second time since his arrival, she looked directly at him. This time she did not dismiss him. The silence that followed his words was immediate and absolute. Commander Vex realized, too late, that he had spoken out loud. He did not move. Not because he was brave, but because he had suddenly remembered every terrible outcome that could result from casually announcing technical opinions on an alien royal landing platform. Slowly, very slowly, he pretended to examine his sleeve, as if the statement had come from somewhere else. It had not. Princess Zara was looking at him, not past him, not through him, at him. Her eyes were pale, reflective, and unnervingly precise. They reminded him of polished crystal lenses, beautiful and entirely capable of dismantling faulty assumptions. "What did you say?" she asked. Her voice was calm, which was worse than anger. Vex straightened slightly, resisting the powerful instinct to point at someone else and run. "I said—" He paused, choosing words with the careful precision of someone attempting to avoid accidental war. "It sounds like feedback." One of the Altaran engineers turned sharply toward him, his long ears angled slightly backward, which Vex suspected was the alien equivalent of offense. "The grid does not produce feedback," the engineer said. His tone suggested this was not merely a technical correction, but a universal truth. Vex nodded politely. "Right," he said. "Of course." He paused. "But it is." The engineer's expression tightened. Princess Zara raised one hand slightly. The engineer fell silent instantly. She stepped forward. The crystal beneath her feet emitted no sound at all. Vex noticed this immediately. He wondered what it meant. She stopped a short distance from him. Up close, she was taller than he had expected. Not by much, but enough to create the subtle impression of elevated perspective. "You claim to understand what our engineers do not," she said. It was not an accusation. It was a test. Vex resisted the urge to say absolutely not. Instead, he gestured carefully toward the platform. "I don't understand it," he said honestly. "Not yet. But energy systems behave in patterns. They oscillate. They respond to load, input, imbalance. Failure has a signature. This doesn't sound like failure." He shifted his weight slightly. The platform responded with a faint harmonic tone. He pointed downward. "That's response." The Altaran engineers exchanged glances. Princess Zara's eyes narrowed slightly. "You believe the system is reacting," she said. "Yes." "To what?" Vex hesitated. This was the dangerous part, because the honest answers sounded ridiculous. He looked down at the crystal beneath his feet. "To us," he said. One of the engineers made a small involuntary sound of disbelief. Vex raised his hand slightly. I know how that sounds. He did. It sounded like he had lost his mind shortly after landing. Princess Zara did not laugh. She studied him carefully. Vex had seen that look before. It was the look of someone evaluating a variable they had not anticipated. You suggest, she said slowly, that our planetary energy grid is responding to biological presence. Vex nodded. Yes. He paused. Which, in my defense, would be extremely interesting. The engineer spoke again, unable to contain himself. That is impossible. Vex gave him a sympathetic look. I agree, he said. Shouldn't be happening. He glanced around at the shimmering crystal city, the harmonic vibrations humming faintly through the air. But it is. Princess Zara tilted her head slightly. It was a small movement, but it carried significance. Curiosity, carefully restrained. She stepped past him. Walk, she said. Vex blinked. I'm sorry? She gestured forward. Walk. He obeyed. He took one step. The platform emitted a tone. He took another. Another tone. Slightly different. He stopped. The tones faded. Princess Zara stepped onto the same section of crystal. Silence. She stepped again. Still silence. She turned back toward him. Walk again, she said. Vex did. Tone. She stepped beside him. Silence. Vex frowned. That's not fair, he said. She did not understand the statement, but she understood the tone. You are different, she said. It was not praise, it was observation. Vex rubbed the back of his neck. I've been told that before, usually by supervisors. Princess Zara studied the crystal beneath his feet. For the first time in her life, Altara's perfect systems were behaving unpredictably, and the only variable was him. She looked back at him. You will come with us, she said. It was not a request. Vex nodded slowly. He had the distinct feeling his day had just become significantly more complicated. Behind them, Ambassador Halvek looked deeply uncomfortable. Princess, Halvek said carefully, Commander Vex is not a diplomatic representative. I am aware, Zara replied. She did not look at the ambassador. She was still watching Vex. That is why he is useful. Vex considered this. He decided it was probably a compliment. Probably. Commander Vex had always believed that the most dangerous sentence in any language was a simple one. Come with me. It never meant something small. It never meant something safe. It usually meant paperwork, mild panic, or in rare cases, catastrophic structural collapse. As Princess Zara led him away from the landing platform, he mentally prepared for all three. The interior of the Altaran royal complex did not resemble a building. It resembled intention made solid. The walls were smooth and translucent, curving organically, as if grown along invisible paths of logic. Light moved through them like slow liquid, carrying faint pulses that reminded him of neural activity. He resisted the urge to apologize to the walls. The floor beneath his boots continued its quiet harmonic responses, each step producing subtle tonal variations. He noticed Zara's steps remained silent. He tried walking more quietly. The floor responded anyway. He frowned at it. This is discrimination, he muttered. Zara glanced at him. He immediately pretended to examine the ceiling. It was an impressive ceiling. Tall, crystal, judgmental. They entered a vast chamber at the heart of the structure. At its center stood a suspended formation of crystal strands, arranged in a complex lattice that shifted constantly, reconfiguring itself in response to invisible inputs. Energy flowed through it in controlled streams, branching and reconnecting like a living nervous system. Vex stopped walking. He stared. Oh, he said softly. He forgot to be nervous. He forgot to be diplomatic. He forgot, briefly, to be human. It was beautiful. Not aesthetically, though it was certainly that. It was beautiful in the way elegant solutions always were. Efficient, precise, alive with purpose. This is your central regulator, he said. It was not a question. Zara watched him carefully. Yes. Vex stepped closer. No one stopped him. The crystal lattice responded immediately. Its internal flows shifted slightly, subtle adjustments cascading outward through the structure. He tilted his head. It's adaptive, he whispered. One of the Altaran engineers stepped forward. It is perfect. Vex nodded. That too. He crouched slightly, examining the base structure. The energy flows were incredibly stable, but not static. They adjusted continuously, compensating for load variations across the planetary grid. He had never seen anything like it. Human systems required constant oversight. This system required trust. He reached out instinctively. Do not touch, the engineer began. Vex's fingers brushed the crystal. The lattice reacted instantly. Energy surged along its pathways, not violently, but eagerly. Patterns shifted, reorganizing themselves around the point of contact. The entire chamber filled with harmonic resonance. Vex froze. The engineer stared in horror. Zara did not move. The crystal beneath his fingers grew warmer. Not dangerously warm, comfortably warm, like recognition. Vex slowly pulled his hand back. The lattice stabilized, but its configuration did not fully return to its previous state. It had changed. The engineer looked at Zara. This is unacceptable, he said. His voice carried genuine fear. Zara did not look at him. She looked at Vex. Explain, she said. Vex blinked. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. I have absolutely no idea, he said. The engineer made a sound that translated universally as frustration. Zara's expression remained calm. You caused the system to respond. Yes. You altered its configuration. Yes. You do not know why. Correct. Zara considered this. Vex rubbed the back of his neck. This is usually the part where someone blames me, he offered helpfully. No one laughed. He stopped trying. Zara stepped closer to the lattice. She extended her own hand. She touched the crystal. Nothing happened. The energy flows remained perfectly stable. She withdrew her hand. The system ignored her. Vex felt suddenly self-conscious. I can apologize again, he said quietly. Zara looked at him. You believe this is damage? Vex shook his head immediately. No. He stepped closer again, examining the altered pathways. It's adaptation. The word lingered in the air. The engineer frowned. Our systems do not require adaptation. Vex gave him a sympathetic look. All systems require adaptation. He hesitated, especially the ones that believe they don't. The engineer did not appreciate this. Zara did. Not visibly, but internally something shifted. She had lived her entire life with imperfection. Predictable, controlled, certain. Nothing had ever surprised her. Until now. She looked at the human engineer. He was not impressive in the way she understood. He carried no noble bearing, no commanding presence. But he had done something no one else had. He had been noticed, not by her, by Altara itself. Vex, meanwhile, was having a quiet existential crisis, because energy systems did not behave like this. They did not respond emotionally. They did not recognize individuals. They did not prefer. He stared at the lattice. That's new, he whispered. The lattice hummed softly. He had the uncomfortable feeling it agreed. Commander Vex did not sleep well. This was not unusual. He had never trusted unfamiliar ceilings, and Altara had provided him with a particularly suspicious one. It hovered above him in smooth crystalline curves, faint streams of light flowing slowly across its surface like drifting thoughts. Every few seconds, the light would subtly shift direction, as if reconsidering its previous decision. He had the uncomfortable impression the ceiling was observing him. He observed it back. This continued for several minutes. Eventually, he lost. He sat up on the edge of the resting platform, which had formed itself into a shape vaguely resembling a human bed after several awkward seconds of adjustment. It had taken 3 attempts. The first version had been too flat. The second had attempted to support parts of his anatomy he did not possess. The third had achieved acceptable mediocrity. He appreciated the effort. He stood slowly and placed his feet on the floor. The crystal beneath him emitted a soft tone. Good morning to you, too, he murmured. The tone shifted slightly. He frowned. I don't speak crystal, he clarified. The floor, to its credit, did not argue. He began walking across the chamber. Each step produced harmonic responses, subtle but distinct. It was like walking across a massive musical instrument, designed by someone with very strong opinions. He reached the curved wall. It opened before he could touch it. He paused. "Thank you," he said cautiously. He stepped into the corridor beyond. The interior of the royal structure was quiet, but not silent. The faint hum of energy surrounded everything, constant and steady. It was not mechanical. It was organic, alive in a way machines never were. He walked slowly, examining the flowing crystal architecture. He wondered how long it had taken Altara to grow itself. A voice spoke behind him. "You are awake." He turned. Princess Zara stood several meters away. She had not made a sound approaching. He suspected she had not needed to. "Yes," he said. "Your ceiling won." She tilted her head slightly. "My ceiling?" "I was watching it. It was watching me. It blinked first." She studied him carefully. "You believe the structure is aware?" He shrugged. "I believe it's complicated." She stepped closer. The crystal beneath her feet remained silent. She glanced down briefly, then back at him. "You hear it," she said. It was not a question. "Yes." "You understand it?" "No," he said immediately. "I absolutely do not." She watched him. "You interact with it." He hesitated. "That part is harder to argue." She began walking. He followed. The corridor curved gradually, leading them toward a larger chamber. The crystal walls shifted subtly as they moved, adjusting shape to accommodate their path. He stared at it. "Does it ever get lost?" he asked. She looked at him. "The structure does not become lost." "That's impressive," he said. "I get lost in my own apartment." She did not respond. He suspected she did not find this relatable. They entered the central regulator chamber. The lattice still hovered at its center. Its energy flows steady but subtly different than before. Vex could see the alterations clearly now. The system had not rejected his interaction. It had integrated it. He stepped closer. The lattice responded immediately. Energy pathways brightened slightly, reorganizing themselves in small but deliberate ways. He froze. "Okay," he said quietly. Zara watched him. "It responds to you." "Yes." "You are not Altaran." "Yes." "You are not part of the system." "Yes." She paused. "Yet it accepts you." He considered this. "I would like to clarify that I did not request this." The lattice hummed softly. He glanced at it. "Don't encourage me," he muttered. Zara stepped beside him. She extended her hand again. She touched the crystal. Nothing happened. The system remained stable, unchanged. She withdrew her hand slowly. For the first time in her life, something had refused her. Not out of defiance, out of indifference. She looked at Vex. "Touch it." He blinked. "You're sure?" "Yes." He hesitated. This felt like the kind of decision that became historical. He placed his hand against the crystal lattice. The response was immediate. Energy surged, not violently, but eagerly. Pathways shifted, forming new connections around his contact point. The harmonic resonance deepened, filling the chamber with layered tones. The system was not malfunctioning, it was communicating. Vex swallowed. "That's new," he whispered. Zara stepped closer. "Can you control it?" He shook his head. "No." He paused. "I don't think it wants control." The words surprised him. They also felt correct. He slowly moved his hand. The energy followed, not randomly, deliberately. He stopped. The system stabilized. He withdrew his hand. The lattice remained altered. Zara stared at it. For centuries, Altara had been perfect. Perfect systems, perfect order, perfect certainty. Now uncertainty stood beside her. He looked at her. "I don't think your planet is broken," he said quietly. She met his gaze. "Then what is it?" He hesitated. He searched for the correct word. "Curious," he said. The lattice hummed softly behind them. For the first time in her life, Princess Zara did not have an answer. Commander Vex had always trusted machines more than people. Machines, at least, were honest about their intentions. If a reactor was unstable, it vibrated. If a system was overloaded, it overheated. If something was about to explode, it usually provided the courtesy of escalating warning signs. People, on the other hand, smiled right before making terrible decisions. Altara was neither machine nor person. It was something in between, and it was paying attention to him. He stood in the central regulator chamber, staring at the lattice as it shifted slowly, its internal energy pathways flowing like illuminated veins. It had been nearly an hour since his last contact, and the system had not returned to its previous configuration. It had kept the changes. He rubbed his hands together absently. "That's usually my job," he murmured. "I'm the one who adapts to the system, not the other way around." Behind him, Princess Zara stood in stillness. She had not left. He had noticed that immediately. He had also noticed that she did not pretend otherwise. "Your presence alters it," she said. He glanced at her. "I promise I'm not doing it on purpose." She stepped forward slightly, her long ears angled with subtle focus. "That does not lessen its significance." He couldn't argue with that. He gestured toward the lattice. "Your system isn't static. It's responsive. It's designed to adjust to variables. It has functioned perfectly for thousands of cycles." "Yes," he said gently, "which means it's never encountered a variable it couldn't predict." She studied him. "You believe you are unpredictable." He smiled faintly. "I believe I'm human." That was explanation enough. The lattice emitted a low harmonic pulse. Vex glanced back at it. "And apparently, it agrees." Zara stepped closer to the structure. Her hand hovered just short of touching it. She did not try again. For the first time in her life, she was hesitating. Vex noticed that too. "May I try something?" he asked. She looked at him. "You have already tried many things." "Yes," he admitted, "but this one is slightly less accidental." She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. He stepped toward the lattice. He did not touch it. Instead, he simply stood near it. He slowed his breathing. He focused on listening, not with his ears, with his instincts. He had spent decades working beside reactors, containment fields, and unstable energy matrices. Engineers learned to recognize patterns others could not through conscious thought, but through familiarity. Energy had rhythm. Altara's rhythm was different, but it was still rhythm. The lattice shifted, not dramatically, subtly. Its harmonic tone adjusted, matching his proximity. He frowned. "That's not load response," he whispered. Load response required contact or demand. This was anticipation. Zara watched him carefully. "You perceive it," she said. "Yes." "You understand it." He shook his head. "No." He paused. "But I'm starting to recognize it." He stepped slightly to the left. The lattice responded. He stepped back. It responded again. He stopped moving. It stabilized. He looked at Zara. "It's not reacting to force." She waited. "It's reacting to presence." The word lingered. Presence. Not weight, not pressure, not input. Existence. Zara stared at the lattice. Altara had always existed in harmony with her people. It sustained them. It obeyed them. It had never behaved like this. It had never behaved like something with preference. Vex rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "This is going to sound ridiculous." She said nothing. He took that as permission. "I think it's trying to understand me." Silence filled the chamber. One of the Altran engineers, standing at the far edge of the room, made a quiet sound of disbelief. "That is impossible." Vex nodded. "I agree." He gestured toward the lattice. "Unfortunately, it disagrees." Zara looked at him. "For what purpose would it seek to understand you?" He smiled slightly. "I ask myself that question frequently." She did not recognize the humor. He continued anyway. "Your entire planetary grid is based on harmonic resonance, right?" "Yes." "It balances itself by maintaining perfect equilibrium." "Yes." He gestured toward himself. "I am not equilibrium." She considered this. He continued. "I'm inefficient. I'm inconsistent. I improvise. I make decisions based on incomplete data. I do things systems aren't supposed to do." The lattice emitted a soft pulse. He glanced at it. "And apparently it finds that interesting." Zara stepped closer to him. Not the lattice. Him. "You believe imperfection is valuable." He hesitated. He thought about every mistake he had ever made, every failed repair, every incorrect calculation, every moment he had doubted himself. "Yes," he said quietly. She studied his face. Altara had been perfect for millennia. Perfect systems, perfect predictability, perfect certainty. And yet, perfection had never produced this. This curiosity. She looked at the lattice, then back at him. For the first time in her long life, Princess Zara felt something unfamiliar. Not confusion, not frustration, something quieter, something more dangerous. Interest. The lattice hummed softly between them. Vex shifted awkwardly. I hope it's not expecting me to stay forever, he said. The lattice pulsed again. He frowned. That was a joke, he clarified carefully. Commander Vex had reached a professional conclusion. He was no longer the engineer studying the system. He was the system being studied. He stood near the central lattice, arms folded, staring at the slow, deliberate flow of energy through its crystalline structure. It had been responding to him for hours now, not continuously, not dramatically, but consistently. Every time he shifted his weight, every time he moved closer or farther away, the harmonic structure adjusted, not to stabilize itself, to acknowledge him. He had experienced equipment failure. He had experienced unpredictable reactors. He had even experienced one memorable incident involving a fusion core and a very irresponsible sandwich. This was different. This was attention. Behind him, Princess Zara remained silent. He had noticed something about her. She did not fill silence the way humans did. She allowed it to exist. She allowed thoughts to complete themselves without interference. It was both calming and deeply unsettling. You are uncomfortable, she said. He glanced back at her. Yes. She waited. He appreciated that. I prefer problems I can fix, he admitted. She stepped closer. And this cannot be fixed? He shook his head slowly. I don't think it's broken. He turned back toward the lattice. I think it's learning. The word felt heavier now, more real. Zara studied the structure carefully. Altara had never needed to learn. It had always known. Its systems were complete, perfect. And yet now perfection was changing. She looked at him. What is it learning? He smiled faintly. That's the part that worries me. He stepped forward. The lattice brightened. Not intensely, just enough. He exhaled slowly. All right, he said quietly. I see you too. He did not know why he said it. It simply felt correct. The harmonic tone shifted. Zara's eyes narrowed slightly. You communicate with it. He shrugged. I talk to everything. He paused. Most things ignore me. The lattice emitted a soft pulse. He pointed at it. Except this one. Zara stepped closer to him now. Close enough that he could sense her presence without looking. Close enough that he became very aware of his own breathing. She studied his expression. You do not fear it. He considered that carefully. I don't think it wants to harm me. It was the truth. Engineers developed instincts for danger, subtle signs, tiny inconsistencies. This did not feel dangerous. It felt curious. Zara reached out suddenly, not toward the lattice, toward him. Her hand stopped just short of his arm. She hesitated. Vex noticed. He remained still. Slowly, carefully, she placed her fingertips against his sleeve. The lattice reacted immediately. Energy surged through its structure, pathways shifting rapidly, harmonic tones overlapping in layered resonance. Both of them froze. Zara pulled her hand back slightly, startled. The lattice stabilized. Vex blinked. That's new, he whispered. She stared at her hand, then at him. It responded. Yes. You did not touch it. Yes. Silence settled between them. He realized what had happened. It had not responded to him. It had responded to them, together. He looked at her. I think, he said slowly, it's responding to interaction. She tilted her head slightly. Interaction. He nodded. Connection? The word lingered. She had lived centuries without needing that word. Altaran society functioned in perfect harmony. Individual connection was unnecessary when collective perfection existed. But this was individual. This was specific. This was new. She stepped closer again, closer than before. He did not move away. Her hand hovered near his arm. She did not touch him again. The lattice pulsed anyway. Anticipation. He felt it clearly now. It was not responding to contact. It was responding to intent. He exhaled slowly. It knows, he whispered. She looked at him. What does it know? He met her gaze. That we're about to do something? She hesitated. For the first time in her life, Princess Zara did something without certainty. She placed her hand gently against his arm. The lattice erupted in harmonic resonance. Not violently, beautifully. Energy cascaded through its crystalline pathways, forming entirely new configurations. Patterns that had never existed before emerged in perfect clarity. Vex stared. He was not afraid. He was amazed. Zara did not pull away. Neither did he. For the first time since his arrival, he was not observing the system. He was part of it. The lattice stabilized slowly, its new configuration holding firm. It had adapted. Again. Zara looked at him. You change it. He shook his head gently. No. He hesitated. We change it. The lattice hummed softly. Agreement. Commander Vex stood in the center of the chamber and accepted a truth he had spent his entire career avoiding. He did not understand everything. He had always believed that if he studied a system long enough, it would eventually surrender its logic. Every machine, every reactor, every network obeyed rules. Even the most complex systems revealed themselves with patience. Altara was patient, but it was not surrendering. It was inviting. The central lattice hovered before him, its crystalline pathways flowing with calm, steady light. The new harmonic patterns it had formed after his interaction with Zara remained stable, permanent. The system had changed itself, not to correct an error, to preserve a moment. Behind him, the Altaran engineers stood in uneasy silence. Their perfect system had done something it was never designed to do. It had made a choice. They did not know whether to fear it or him. Vex scratched the side of his neck awkwardly. I would like to formally state, he said, that I did not mean to emotionally influence your planet. No one laughed. He had hoped someone would. Princess Zara stood beside him. She had not stepped away, not since the lattice had responded to both of them. She stared at the structure, her expression calm but no longer distant. Something in her certainty had softened, not weakened, expanded. This has never occurred, one of the engineers said quietly. His voice carried centuries of stability behind it. Vex nodded. That's usually how new things work. The engineer frowned. Zara spoke before he could respond. It is not damage. The engineer hesitated. No, she continued, her voice steady. It is growth. The words settled into the chamber. Altara had never needed growth. It had been complete until now. Vex looked at her. He realized something in that moment. She was not afraid. She was relieved. He exhaled slowly. I think your system was waiting, he said. Zara turned her head slightly. For what? He gestured vaguely. For something it didn't already understand. The engineer spoke again. It has always understood everything necessary. Vex smiled gently. That's the problem. He stepped closer to the lattice. It responded immediately, its harmonic tone warm and steady. It was perfect, he continued. Perfect systems don't change. They don't adapt. They don't improve. They just continue. He hesitated. Until they stop. The engineer did not argue, because he understood. Perfection was stability, but stability was not life. Zara stepped forward beside him. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the crystal surface. You brought change, she said. Vex shook his head. No. He looked at her. You accepted it. The lattice pulsed softly. Agreement. She studied him carefully. You will leave. It was not accusation. It was certainty. He nodded. Yes. He had always been leaving. That was his role. Engineer. Fix. Move on. Forget. He looked at the lattice. It hummed quietly, its new harmonic structure permanent. He smiled faintly. You'll be fine, he said to it. It responded. He hoped that meant goodbye. He turned back to Zara. She stood motionless, not distant, not untouchable, present. He realized she was no longer the unreachable princess he had first seen on the landing platform. She was someone standing at the edge of something new, just like him. You don't reject everything, he said gently. She tilted her head slightly. I reject certainty, she replied. He smiled. That's a good start. Silence settled between them, not empty, complete. He extended his hand. She looked at it. A simple human gesture, imperfect, unnecessary. She placed her hand in his. The lattice erupted in its most beautiful resonance yet, not chaotic, not unstable, alive. Energy flowed in harmonic waves, spreading outward across the planetary network. The crystal structures beyond the chamber responded, their distant tones shifting in quiet unity. Altara was no longer perfect, it was becoming. Vex released her hand slowly. The lattice stabilized. It did not return to its old configuration. It never would. He stepped back. For what it's worth, he said, you were worth surprising. She watched him carefully. And you, she said quietly, were worth accepting. He laughed softly. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. He turned toward the exit. He paused. He looked back one last time. The lattice hummed gently. Zara stood beside it, not alone, not unchanged. Neither of them were. He walked away. The crystal beneath his feet sang with every step. This time he understood why. It was not measuring him. It was remembering.